Goodbye, Louisville, Kentucky. As far as I know, that's one of the few films in history to use Louisville, Kentucky as an integral part of its plot, and mainly it's to blow it up at the end. Actually, Louisville, Kentucky, when you think about it, is an integral part of the plot of The Hustler. Anyway, here's my interpretation of the end of that movie. I think they're saying that when the army nukes the place and the acid rain starts again, it's like the nuclear version of burning the zombie in the incinerator. Now, every dead thing within 100 miles is going to be hopping around like a chicken with its head cut off, including chickens with their heads cut off. So I'd hate to be in the frozen food section right now. But the guys who made the sequel didn't latch on to that idea, because part 2's just pretty much the same story where they find more of those zombies in the tuna cans. Okay, next week we only have time for one movie because it's one of those NBA big hoo-ha slam dunk nights. But after the game, we're showing The Gate, the kitty demon flick that stars the young Stephen Dorff as the yard monster who opens a gate to hell in his backyard. I'm Joe Bob Briggs, and we got Jaws numero 20 coming up, which if you've ever been out to California and gone on the Universal Studios tour where they take you around on a little bus and show you how they made Howard the Duck and how it wasn't a real duck but a stuffed duck, and he didn't really fly through the air, but they hung him up by some invisible suspenders, stuff like that. Anyway, if you've ever been on that tour, then you know the highlight of the tour is when you drive through the city of Amity from Jaws, and then just when the tour bus starts over this bridge, this giant shark comes up out of the water and tries to eat you, and you think it's going to tump the bus over. But that's only because all the Iranian tourists are running over to the other side of the bus to take pictures of the giant shark to send back home to Tehran. And the only reason I'm telling you this story is because Universal Pictures has made approximately $974 billion on this fish, even though Jaws 4, The Revenge, was so bad the fish refused to eat several of the supporting actors. And the reason this fish made so much money is not necessarily because of the first original Jaws. It had mostly to do with Jaws 2, which kept the whole sequel deal going. It takes up where the first Jaws left off with everybody dead except Roy Scheider, but Roy starts noticing that people are dying out in the Atlantic Ocean with giant teeth marks in their brains, but the city council won't believe him, and Roy starts thinking, the shark's back, and you know what? The shark's got a disguise. Next thing you know, Roy's making him up some cyanide bullets, and you know what's next. Boom, 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 boom. Tooth City. Let's get it going. We'll do the drive-in totals at the first break. Roll it. Richard Dreyfuss, he wasn't really dead at the end of the first movie, was he?
No.
So I don't know why they weren't able to bring back Roy. They were able to bring back Roy Scheider, but not Richard Dreyfuss. Because what other movie did he make in order to avoid the horrors of Jaws 2? Anybody know? You know what it was, I think? The Big Fix. That movie about Berkeley politics. No, you know what it was? Victory at Entebbe. With Richard Dreyfuss as Colonel Netanyahu. Right? He played Netanyahu years ago. Well, they're both nervous types, aren't they? Makes sense. All right, if you're going to write into us here at Monstervision and share your gripes, your opinions, whatever, and you're a woman under 140 pounds, single, and you don't have any strong opinions about any of the most common vices that men have, then I want you to use my home address because it's quicker. So just send those letters. What? I cleared this. I can do this. I'm telling you, we had a 3-hour meeting about this. It's not an attempt to get nookie on TV. Well, you don't have to use that word. Look. All right, look, I'm going to have to get back to you later. But meanwhile, just keep writing to us at 1010 Techwood Drive, Atlanta, Georgia, 30318, and emailing us at monstervision@turner.com. I like Superfly. What are you saying about Superfly? Why do you use that word? What's the implication there?
Visit the Monstervision website at tnt.turner.com/Monstervision.
You know what the two most horrifying moments are in this movie? The first one is when the Amity High School band plays their rendition of Petula Clark's Downtown. And the second is when the band plays their rendition of Astrid Gilberto's Girl from Ipanema. Some things require prison sentences, you know, just when you thought it was safe to go back to marching band practice. I think what most people remember best about this movie is that poster, just when you thought it was safe to go back. But at the time, it was the most successful sequel ever made. Steven Spielberg and Richard Dreyfuss supposedly did want to work on Jaws 2, but they were too busy making Close Encounters of the Third Kind, so the studio hired a guy named John D. Hancock to direct it. And his big claim to fame was the early Robert De Niro flick, Bang the Drum Slowly, where De Niro plays the dying baseball player. Did you guys see that one? Remember that one? Anyhow, John Hancock's wife, Dorothy Tristan, wrote the original script for Jaws 2, which had this big subplot about the mafia moving in with the mayor to sell some seaside property or something. But the studio fired Hancock because he was more interested in making a people movie than a shark movie with a lot of effects, and his wife went with him, of course, and they hired a French guy named Jeannot Swark, who scrapped all but 90 seconds of the footage and started shooting action scenes while the script was being rewritten. And I think the movie kind of suffers from that, but it's pretty hard to mess up this concept too much, so I still like it. Okay, I said I'd do the drive-in total, so here they are. We have 7 dead bodies, 1 dead whale, 1 dead shark, 20 dead bluefish, no breaths, exploding speedboat, floating zombie corpse, rebellious teen boating, scuba diver chomping, water skier chomping, nerdy teenager chomping, helicopter chomping, somersaulting catamaran, giant fish fry, 3.5 stars. Okay, go. Did I say it was hard to mess up the killer shark concept? See, I might have forgotten about the immortal Jaws 4, where the shark follows Lorraine Gary to the Bahamas on her vacation. The shark has to search the hotels.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Jaws 2 on TNT.
And you guys thought only our first movie tonight had zombies. The great pop-up burnt corpse scene of Jaws 2, because the woman being attacked by the shark tries to save herself by pouring gasoline all over herself. So there's a lot of scenes in this flick that are throwbacks to the first movie, homages. Like, remember in Jaws 1 where the head pops into the hole in the bottom of the boat? Of course you do. Scariest scene in the whole dang movie. This was supposed to mirror that scene. And the rotting whale in the dunes is kind of like the rotting skinny dipper in the dunes in the first movie. But when you think about it, Jeannot Swark is a pretty good choice to do a Spielberg sequel. We talk about that Spielberg glow, right? Well, Jeannot Swark... Can I say Jeannot Swark 5 more times just for fun? Jeannot Swark. He did the glowiest movie in human history, Somewhere in Time, the one where Christopher Reeve falls in love with a picture of Jane Seymour and wills himself into the past so he can make goo-goo eyes at her for 2 hours. Remember that one? Many marriages have broken up over that one movie. Women love that movie. Women will fight you for the remote when that movie is on. World War III is breaking out over on CNN. Doesn't matter. That dial is staying right there on the Lifetime network till they stop sobbing over Christopher Reeve's soulful blue eyes. Okay, let's see what Roy Scheider is going to do about the zombie floating around in the drink. Roll it. Oh, I love how the mayor refuses to even consider that there might be another shark. That's Murray Hamilton's job in all Jaws movies, to tell Roy Scheider, no, there can't possibly be a shark out there. Because, see, he wasn't on the boat in the first movie, right? Brody tells him the shark was as big as the mayor's Buick. The mayor says, Brody says he thinks the shark's big brother is back to get revenge. The mayor says, yeah, why don't you take some time off, get a little R&R, like in a mental institution, you know? But you know why the mayor's so stupid? Because if he's not, we have no movie. We need Murray Hamilton.
And Jaws 2 on TNT.
Did you notice the little Richard Dreyfuss moment there? The Where's Richard moment? Roy Scheider mixes up his sodium cyanide bullets and then he places a call to Matt Hooper, but Matt is on an ocean expedition and, quote, not available for shark hunting. Okay, so Richard Dreyfuss is not in the movie, but don't you think they could have sent another shark expert? You don't just ignore that, do you? It'd be like doing a Poltergeist sequel with no parapsychology expert, right? And while we're on that subject, have you noticed how similar the two movies are? Poltergeist and this movie? Suburban paradise disrupted by spirits, suburban paradise disrupted by big fish, okay? Only one person really knows what's going on. Bring in the experts, people start dying, and of course we have the little sweet family bonding moments like that last scene of the son helping Roy Scheider pick up the bullets on the beach. And you know what's kind of strange to me is that the older kid, Mike, played by Mark Gruner in his last Hollywood appearance, his first being an episode of the Brady Bunch, where I think he was one of Marsha's studs. Anyway, isn't this the same kid who was almost eaten by the shark in the first movie? he falls into that lagoon thingy in the first movie and comes this close to being made into fish food. So don't you think it's kind of weird that he's like, oh, come on, Dad, can't I go party on the water with my drunk friends? There's no shark out there. This kid should be pumped up on Ritalin and seeing a shrink 3 times a week at this point. We should have the scene where he tortures his cat or something, right? Anyhow, let's get back to the flick. And by the way, have you noticed that Roy Scheider seems to be a little hoarse in this movie? Every time he goes to yell out a cuss word, he gets hit with laryngitis, you know? Isn't that funny how that happens, you know? Hate when that happens.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Jaws 2 on TNT.
You know, Roy Scheider was really, really hot after Jaws came out. Universal Studios gave him a 3-picture deal. And the first thing he did was The Sorcerer in 1977, and his second movie was supposed to be The Deer Hunter, but 2 weeks into production, Roy got the finished script, and he read the ending. Now, if you remember, Robert De Niro goes back to Vietnam to find his buddy Nick, and he watches Nick kill himself in the final game of Russian roulette. Well, the Robert De Niro role was originally Roy Scheider's role, but Roy thought that this guy wouldn't go halfway around the world to find his friend, only to have the friend kill himself. Now, I personally don't know why anybody would be asking the actors to decide whether the screenplay was any good or not, but apparently Michael Cimino was doing that at the time, and I don't think Roy is in the Writers Guild or anything, but he was so upset by the ending that he said creative differences, and he walked. He quit. And Universal was pretty steamed about it, but they said they'd forget about his quitting the movie if he did Jaws 2. And not only that, but they'd count Jaws 2 as 2 movies instead of 1, so he'd be out of his contract. And then The Deer Hunter, it only won like 19 Oscars that year. So Roy. Anyway, back to the flick. Although I do know how Roy feels, because I sometimes have creative differences with the network here where I try and do something that TNT doesn't like. And if they don't like it, I say, okay, that's it, I'm walking. And you know what they say? Nothing.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Jaws 2 on TNT.
Man, oh man, they're a little skimpy with the shark footage, aren't they? We're about an hour and 5 minutes into the movie before we really see any tooth action, and that's right after we had to sit through that endless montage of the sailboats and the catamarans. But you notice that girl, Jackie? The tomboyish one, the one they say, she's got breasts like a sparrow, only they don't say breasts. And in fact, in the TNT version, now that I think of it, they don't say anything. That line got scissored out of this version. So I'll do it for you. She's got like a sparrow. Anyway, that actress is a young Donna Wilkes who would go on to great B-movie fame about 5 years later as, anybody know? Angel. Remember that movie? Angel, high school student by day, hooker by night. Co-starring Rory Calhoun. Okay, who else we got here? That's Mark Gilpin as Sean, the kid who blackmails his big brother into taking him sailing. He's the real-life brother of Perry Gilpin, the slutty woman on Frasier. But which one is Bob? There's a character somewhere in this movie named Bob, played by Billy Van Zandt, and that's bugging me because I can't figure it out. You guys know who Billy Van Zandt is, right? Adrienne Barbeau's husband. He's the guy who impregnated her with twins. She had twins at the age of 52. I want to see this guy. He's been eating his spinach, hasn't he? Anyhow, the shark is headed for those naughty teenagers, so let's keep it going. This is really like a Friday the 13th movie, isn't it? Teenagers drink, smoke, and fornicate. Big monster starts killing them off. They even got the cast down. The popular kid, the slutty pageant winner, her bad girl cousin, the nerdy guys. I like the nerdy guys in this flick. I like those hats they wear, those Depression-era newspaper boy caps with the glasses that are too big. Good look for sailing.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Jaws 2 on TNT.
Did you know that today is May Day? The annual celebration by fairy-worshipping goat dancers and card-carrying communists, both. Commies dancing around the maypole. I never quite got the connection, but that's all. Back to the movie. What? There's no law that says I can't do that. Joe Bob, you talk too much. Okay, fine. Zip it.
to Joe Bob's Last Call and Jaws 2 on TNT.
Well, aren't we terrified now? While the kids wait on their boats for help, why don't I tell you about the problems they had on the set with this movie? When we ran Jaws here a while back, I told y'all what a nightmare it was to shoot that thing. The mechanical shark wouldn't work, the weather was always changing, things got stolen off the set, they had tourists crawling all over them, the budget tripled, so when they made Jaws 2, they were ready. First movie was filmed on Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, which was a major hassle, so they moved the sequel down to Florida. Well, first they had some actors stung by jellyfish, and then the real nightmare was, it's just so horrible, I can barely even say this, they had butterflies in the shot. Every time the director yelled action, there was a dang butterfly in the picture. Can you imagine? See, do you ever get the idea that people in the publicity department at Universal have way too much time on their hands? Okay, the shark is going nuclear on us, so let's roll the film. I forgot to mention Jeffrey Kramer, who plays Hendrix. He's had an interesting career. He was a background singer in You Light Up My Life. He was the deputy in the first two Jaws flicks, and now he's co-executive producer of Ally McBeal. So, let's see, Debbie Boone's backup singer, Swimming with Sharks, network producer. It does make sense, doesn't it? Perfect career arc when you think about it.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Jaws 2 on TNT.
Well, there's something you don't see every day, a shark eating a helicopter. As you know, I always like to give credit to people in the movies who truly know how to scream in terror, because we don't have as many screamers as we used to, but we have a great one here, that girl Jackie, who I mentioned before as Angel, high school honor student by day, Hollywood hooker by night. Very underrated actress. I'll tell you what I thought was the scariest scene in that last part, though. It was when they rescue the little kid off the upside-down boat, and then Andy, the curly-headed guy, cuddles and kisses him to reassure him. Plants a big old wet one on him. You know what? Let's get back to the flick, because I'm getting weirded out just thinking about that scene. Exciting conclusion to Jaws 2. Go. And I'm not homophobic. Why do they always say that when you make a remark like that on TV? Joe Bob, you're homophobic. Doesn't homophobic mean you're afraid of gay people? I'm not afraid of them. You know, whatever wangs your doodle, you know? Whatever wets your wang doodle. I don't care. Whatever doodle you can get a wang out of. Not to get explicit or anything.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Jaws 2 on TNT.
Well, what do you think? As good as the first one? The way they fry the shark with the giant high-voltage wire? There is one little thing that bothers me about that, though. Why didn't Roy Scheider get fried along with the shark? Wouldn't that be like dropping a giant hairdryer into a really big bathtub? And the fish was looking a little mechanical there in that last scene, don't you think? Anyhow, that was the last we saw of that piece of barbecued seafood until he radioed his cousin down in Florida to rampage all the tourists at SeaWorld in Jaws 3. Okay, I want to remind you that next week, after 19 hours of basketball games, we'll be showing The Gate, which features more rebellious teens and some fine midget demon disco dancing. And that's it for me, Joe Bob Briggs. I can't even say my name at this hour of the night. Joe Bob Briggs reminding you that if you love something, set it free. If it comes back, it will always be yours. If it doesn't come back, it was never yours to begin with. But if it just sits in your living room, messes up your stuff, eats your food, uses your telephone, takes your money, and doesn't appear to realize that you actually set it free in the first place, you either married it or gave birth to it. Did you guys hear the one about the circus that comes to town advertising for a replacement lion tamer? Well, the morning of the auditions, there's a group of prospective applicants, including a very statuesque blonde in a trench coat. And the circus manager lines up all the applicants and puts the blonde at the front of the line, and he tells her to enter the lion's cage to see if she qualifies for the job. Well, as the blonde steps into the cage, the lion is released from his pen. He leaps toward the blonde, growling, baring his teeth, and just as the lion is about to pounce on the blonde, she opens her trench coat to reveal that she's completely naked. The lion comes to an abrupt halt, crouches down, crawls over to the blonde, and starts licking her feet, legs, and thighs. The circus manager turns to the next applicant in line and he asks him, "Do You think you could do that? And the guy says, hell yes, just get that damn lion out of there. Joe Bob Briggs reminding you that the drive-in will never die. Highway patrolman pulls alongside a speeding car on the freeway. He's glancing down over at the car, and he's shocked to see that this blonde behind the wheel is actually knitting while she drives. The trooper cranks down his window, and he yells to the driver, pull over. And the blonde yells back, no, scarf.